first time we're actually doing an event like this for our team, even for our team of coaches. And we've been so blessed to have Jeanie. You know, she's a John Maxwell certified speaker to join us, and she's already part of Team Thunder. But she knows so much good things that could help us in our everyday lives and not only in our fitness journey. Because here at Team Thunder, we believe that, you know, health and fitness doesn't just mean like weight loss or building muscle or, you know, eating clean and drinking your Shakeology. I mean, the root of everything is just really to be healthy, mind, body, and soul. So hopefully this this event will help all of us understand like what our why is, because it's so important to know what our why is to even go anywhere in life, right? So thank you again for joining our call. We have a few more people joining in. Good morning, Stacy. And so, yeah, Chris, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, well, Jeanie, we've known each other through work. I've known her for about 30 years. No, we've known each other for what, six years or so?
Yeah.
We both work for hospice, and she's our director of education. So that's a really good role for her. But as Roxy said, she is a certified coach, trainer, and speaker, I guess, with the John Maxwell group. And we're just very blessed. She always, every day, she adds value to my life. So I'm glad I get to share her with the group, and you guys can get a glimpse into what she does, and she really does make a difference for a lot of people. So we're very blessed to have her.
And actually, I like the fact that we're kind of small and informal today. A couple things I want to share with you guys. This is John Maxwell. If you don't know who he is actually, if you Google him, Inc. magazine will tell you he is the #1 leadership guru in the world. So he is at the top of his game when it comes to training and developing people. As a matter of fact, we are in the process of signing contracts right now with 22 different countries, and we're getting ready to launch a whole lot of projects. And the reason I love his material so much is it does help me work with corporations and businesses and teams and individuals. But these principles are so universal that they are going to be just as significant 100 years from now in Guatemala as they are right here today. So they transcend culture, time, and generation. And whenever we do a speaking engagement, one of the things we like to give people is the ACT formula, ACT. When you're hearing things, if it's something you find yourself wanting to apply, you put an A by it. If it's something in your life you want to change, you put a C by it. And if it's something you want to teach others, you use a T. And so it's the entire ACT principle. I'm going to tell you how well this works. This works so well that when I was flunking out of high school, I graduated with a GPA of 1.6. And so that is between a D and an F average. I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. I was a welfare child, so I'm one of the few people that got out of the system. The most people stay in it their whole lives. And I took that experience and I took these principles and applied it. And I went from, there was no college beating down my door. As a matter of fact, they were rejecting me because of my academic skills, or so they thought. I used those to apply in my quest to go back and get a degree in nursing and health sciences. And I graduated from college with a GPA of 3.5 and spent most of my time on the dean's list. And it wasn't because my intellect changed. It was because I applied some principles. 12 years ago, when I was in a horrible crisis, I had a very successful business, and due to some very horrendous circumstances, found myself burying my husband and unexpectedly homeless. And I applied the same principles that got me from those positions to now partnering with the #1 leadership guru in the country. And you guys right here are going to see me use those same principles over the next 6 to 12 months to go from a size 18 to my goal of a size 6. And it's going to happen. It's the same principles that apply to everything. It doesn't. And by the way, last year when I went to the Florida conference with John, guess what he was drinking? His Shakeology. He has a coach that he said was kicking his you-know-what. And he did not realize he was convicting me from the stage because I didn't bring mine to the conference, but this year I'm coming prepared. So I know so I want to talk a little bit about why and how this helps us to accelerate our success. If I ask Mallory or Sarah or Chris, if I said to you guys, tell me about you. A lot of us, when we answer that question, describe ourselves in terms of our roles. I'm a student. I'm a daughter. I'm a wife, a mother, a husband. I'm an accountant. I'm a nurse. And although all those things are kind of important, there's something bigger than the roles. The roles are kind of a part of our what, but they really don't tell us our why. There's a story about a little boy, a priest, a very high maintenance attorney, and a physician on a Sunday afternoon. They went out for a ride in their airplane, and they were sending pretty high up there. And all of a sudden there was some engine trouble that took place, and the pilot's like, oh my gosh, we got to go. He's like, we're not going to be able to, we're going down. He grabs a parachute, he jumps out, and he tells the others to do the same. Well, there were only 3 parachutes and 4 people. And so the physician said, I'm a doctor. He starts justifying, I save lives, I'm important, I should live. So he grabs a parachute and he jumps, and now there's down to 2. And the attorney says, well, I'm among the smartest people in the world, and so I deserve to live too. So he grabs one and jumps. And the priest looks at the little boy and says, my son, I've lived a long and wonderful life. So you go ahead and take that parachute because I don't need to continue on and live. And the little boy hands him a parachute and says, not to worry, Father. The smartest man in the world just jumped out of the plane with my backpack. And what that story illustrates is that often we think it's our titles that make us, but we're going to be defined a lot more by our actions and choices over time, whether it's in fitness or not, than we are by our titles. So I'm going to move on here. All right, one of my favorite quotes by Ralph Waldo Emerson: what lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. And that's why I was telling, some of you didn't log in early enough to hear this part, but I was talking to Nick and Roxy and Chris earlier, and I was saying to them that usually at this time of the year, I start slacking off on things like fitness and diet, and I eat what I want, when I want, because I know that the new year's coming. And this year I'm taking a totally different approach because I want to finish strong with the 21-day fix. And a lot of the reason behind that is because I made the decision to surround myself with people on the same mission as I am. We can't do this alone. None of us are going to succeed alone. And we need to allow us to open up ourselves to the fact that this truth right here, what lies within us, is not based on our past experience. It's not even based on my past failures. It's not based on my bank account. It's not based on what size I am. It's based on a whole lot of other things that we don't often consider. There was a story about a tiger that died in the wilderness while giving birth. And a herd of goats came and they found the little baby tiger. And they took it in and they raised the tiger as one of their own. So he thought he was a goat. He acted like a goat. He ate vegetarian like a goat. He had behaviors like a goat. And what ended up happening was one day another tiger came into the herd and all the goats scattered because they were scared to death. Except for the little tiger. He kind of stood there and had a strange affinity to this animal, but he wasn't sure yet why. And the big tiger looked at him and said, what's the matter with you? You're sitting here acting like a goat. And he said, I am a goat. And he said, no, you're not. He leads him to a pond where he can see his reflection in the mirror. And what he finds is that he looks an awful lot like the big tiger, and he was not aware of that. And he follows the big tiger back to his cage and had some meat there from a recently killed animal. And he says, have some. He says, I can't, I'm a vegetarian. He says, no, you're not. So at first he takes a bite, kind of like the first time Jeanie puts on the 21-day fix video and she's huffing and puffing 7 minutes into it going, how am I ever going to make it 30 minutes? And at first he doesn't like it so much. He doesn't like the taste, but then he takes another bite and another, and she puts the video in the next day and the next week, and he starts getting accustomed to it. And before you know it, he actually starts liking it. And then he lets out this little tiny roar called a roar of awakening. And it's when he realizes and recognizes he wasn't who he thought himself to be. He's not limited to the kind of life he'd been living. And the awareness comes that there's so much more for him if he chooses to walk in that destiny. And this was the first awakening for me that I applied when I went from flunking out of high school to graduating with honors in college. They would not accept me. And rather than say, okay, I'm going to believe what somebody else's definition of me is, I said, what can I do to change that? And they said, go to community college for a year or two, show us your academics and that you can do this, then we'll reconsider. And I thought, I'm going to show you. I went to that community college and I decided to put everything I had to it. I graduated with really high honors. And the course that once rejected me was now accepting me into enrollment. And I graduated 5 years later. It's kind of like that. I talk about it a lot more in another program called the Dare to Dream program. But if you think for a minute that's really that I was going to allow myself to be defined by what other people said, no. The first day I walked into freshman English, a professor assigned us something, and we came back in after we did our assignment to get our grades, and he gave us what for. He was complaining. He expected more from people who had graduated from high school. He was embarrassed and ashamed of our work. And he said, but there's one person in this room who could be teaching this class. And we all sat on the edge of our seat because he had just given us a big lecture. So we're like, who is that person? And he walked over to me and handed me my paper and said, I know you have a major in nursing, but I'd like to speak with you after class because I'd like you to consider changing your major to English because you have a gift for communication and writing that I think you need to use. And I was in shock. I'm like, but doesn't he know I'm a welfare kid? Doesn't he know I was flunking out of high school? Doesn't he know? And afterwards, when I spoke with Professor Dorn, I'm like, but you don't understand my past. He goes, I don't care about your past. That was music. I don't even care about what was there. I care about what I see in you that we can build on today. And I think sometimes when we allow ourselves to get a little bit back in our thinking, it's because we spend too much time thinking about how others define us or how we've chosen to wrongly define ourselves. So I'm going to tell you guys, when I graduated with honors, it wasn't because I became an intellectual wizard. I only changed one thing during that course of time. And that is, my game changer was I began to re-engineer my thinking about who I believed I was, and the rest simply fell into place. Mark Twain says, the two most important days of our life are the day we are born and the day we discover why. And we learn to walk in our why. And I posted a video this morning on my Facebook page of Michael Jr., who's a comedian, talking about what it looks like, an illustrative example of walking out your why. But the quality of my life and yours is always going to be in direct proportion to the quality of questions we ask ourselves. Example, I love to travel. So let's say I say, Jeanie, you want to go to Italy. How can you go to Italy and get paid for 2 weeks and get paid while doing so? That requires a certain answer, but it's not a big answer. I just put in my vacation time. I have the time. Work will pay me. I'll be on vacation. However, let's say I ramped up the quality of my question to myself, like I did recently, and I'll tell you the result of what happened. Excuse me. Hang on. I went from how can I get paid for 2 weeks for free to how can you make an additional $10,000 while you're over there those 2 weeks? That changed the quality of my question, needed a different answer. Did I have it right away? No. But guess what happened, guys? I have it right up there on my board. I have Italy written down. I made a vision board in January. And I have Italy written down as one of my places to go. Did I know where and how and where I was going to finance it? No, but I chose not to worry about the external circumstances. 10 days later, I walked into a group of women who paid to become part of my Dare to Dream 5-week program. The first week, I had not told them anything about my vision board. One of the women said, can I share one of my dreams? And I said, sure, Madonna, go for it. She says, I have a dream of taking a group of women on retreat to Italy and getting them unplugged, and then also combining that with tourism and travel and doing a workshop retreat for self-improvement. And I'm like, come again? I said, that's exactly how I can make my $10,000. Long story short, that was January of this year. She's now a John Maxwell certified coach. She and I are partnering on doing 3 programs, one in Michigan, one in Ohio, and in 2017 of October, we're going to take a select group of 10 to 15 women over to Italy. I didn't see that when I put that on the vision board, but I saw what was in my heart. So I had to learn to say goodbye to my alibis, and I still have to learn this. If you guys think because I'm doing this presentation, I got all the swagger there is, I'm still learning. But I'm learning to keep growing in that, and I'm learning to walk in my why. And the alibis that kept me stuck are things like this. If only I was appreciated more. If only I hadn't missed that opportunity way back when. If only I was understood better. They just need to understand me better at work, right, Chris? If only the conditions around me were different and my bank account was so full that I didn't have to say, money, may I? Time, may I? Wait, may I? That's what I had to learn to let go of. You know, there's a story about a group of elephants. A gentleman went by and he was looking at them. In India, we call this river reed thinking. Mary Morrissey was one of my mentors who taught me this. And he went by and he saw these elephants on these little chains around their legs, and they could easily just break them off, but they didn't. They just stood there. And so he asked the trainer, what is the deal? Why? You don't need a gate. You don't need a fence. You don't need anything to keep them in. What's going on here? And he said, well, when they're very young, what we do is we put that same chain around them to tie them. And at that age, it's enough to hold them. Because they are conditioned to believe they cannot break away and that the rope can still hold them, when they become adults, they never try to break free. The man was amazed. He could see that these animals could break free at a moment's notice if they wanted to, yet they were sitting there passively, not even trying to. Like the elephants, that's why we say goodbye to alibis, because sometimes we go through life hanging on to a limiting belief that somebody told us was true about us that it really isn't. And you know, here's the cool thing. We are not required to embrace somebody else's ideology in order to move forward in pursuing some of our dreams. There are a couple of things we need to be aware of, and that is the difference between dream killers and dream fulfillers. And I know all about the killers because I have done every one of them. Sometimes I even had to do twice to really learn the lesson. So the first group, you see indecision, procrastination, and doubt show up. And the second group, you see decisiveness, doing it now, and confidence and faith. I want to make a disclaimer. We're not always going to do everything perfect. It's not even about whether we fail or how much we fail. It's about what we choose to do with the failure that's going to be the difference maker. I mean, if you look at Abe Lincoln, he failed more times than he succeeded, had a nervous breakdown a couple of times, had horrible tragedies, and yet he ended up becoming the president of the United States of America. You look at some other cool people we're going to be talking about in a minute. But indecision, it shows up as letting others do our thinking for us. Staying on the fence to avoid conflict or avoid responsibility. It's about living in default mode. If anybody watches Winnie the Pooh, Eeyore's there. Oh, woe is me. Oh, bother. It's the Eeyore mentality, living in not making a decision and letting others controlling our thinking. Whereas being decisive means embracing the truth and discarding the lies and saying, not going to work for me, not going to work. I'm going to live by design and take ownership. Procrastination, that shows up was where we choose to put off today what we should have done last year. Doing it now. What keeps us from doing it now? I'm going to tell you one of them. It's the biggest lie you'll ever find. I can't do it until it's perfect. I can't do it until it's perfect. We need to throw perfect out the window and go with good enough. Because sometimes good enough is better. Being good enough, and I'm going to say it right now, Roxy, some of your posts, when you're being real and you got the baseball cap on, that's better than you ever having been glammed to the nines and being perfect. It's good. It makes us relatable to one another, guys. Doubt are excuses designed that I would put in place to cover up. or apologize for my failures. But rather than apologize for my failures and live in shame for them, I can walk out in the confidence and faith that, guess what? Next time I'm in this position, I've learned from this and I'm going to do it better. My very own mentor, the #1 leadership guru in the world, has made some pretty ginormous blunders. One time when he was traveling, somebody gave him a gun for his wife, Margaret, as a gift. He's like, John, you travel a lot. Margaret's home. Here's a little handgun for her. And he was on his private jet. And he said, okay. He forgot all about the gun. He put it in his briefcase. The next week he gets on a business trip, not on the private jet, in a commercial airline, puts the bag through security. And here John Maxwell is, the most recognizable man around the world. And security pulls him over because he's packing heat. And they have to handcuff him and walk him down. He goes through it was a humiliating lesson. And his press agent said, what are we going to do to cover it up? He's like, there's no covering this up. They were taking photos and everything. Let's just put it out there and show my stupidity. Creators versus reactors. If you look at those two words, guys, same word. It's just that one begins with C and the other begins with R. Creators live from the inside out and reactors live from the outside in. What do I mean by that? As a reactor, and I've probably done more reacting than creating in my life, but as a reactor, that would mean when I practically flunked out of high school, I would have said, due to the fact that I'm a welfare child, due to the fact that my family lives on government assistance and we don't have money, due to the fact that I have poor academic history, I cannot go to college. That's living from the outside in. That's not, my heart says I want to be a nurse and be in healthcare. But I'm not listening to my heart. I'm looking at the circumstances and the conditions around me. Living from the inside out says, I don't care what I'm seeing around me. The truth is not always in the appearance of things. I'm going to embrace what's in the core of who I am. And if I don't know what's in the core, I'm going to do some things to discover that. Because I'm going for what makes my heart sing. And I'm going to get greater clarity on why I'm here. And I'm going to live by design rather than by default. My mission statement's really simple, and it's at the beginning of my LinkedIn account. And it says, you know, my mission is to be an ambassador of hope, breathing new life into individuals and businesses. Now, the way I flesh that out is as a nurse executive, is as a coach with John Maxwell, is as a daughter that's taking care of my mother, in a lot of other ways. But those are the roles. They're not my why. And once I got clear on my why, it's a lot easier to push play and say, okay, Autumn, we're going to spend some time together today, even though you don't make me happy all the time. Some expectations need a good eulogy written for them. I've had to write a lot of eulogies in my day because I've had to get rid of those chains of limited thinking. Generators of dreams will create rather than react every time, and they pursue their passion without allowing circumstances to define them. They start with the C rather than the R. And here's what happens, just like Jeanie going to Italy. Somewhere along the way, if we hold on to that and that emotion with believing, the conditions get informed and the circumstances realign themselves to meet the conditions that we as the creator of that dream want. And that's where wild success ensues. Wild, and I mean wild success. I would have never dreamed at the beginning of this year that I'm planning some of the international projects that I am. Now, you know, one day my current position that I'm working as employment will be aware of that, but they're not fully aware. I've shared a little bit with them of all the cool things that we have coming. I live in Lebanon, Ohio. And if you don't know where that is on the map, it's halfway between Dayton and Cincinnati. So I'm about 20 miles away from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base right now. And the cool thing about Wright-Pat is, if you go back to the Wright brothers who invented flying, were they the first people that had the idea? Did they just create it? Did they have all this education? Not really. Not really. They defined their vision by their passion rather than what they could see, because up to that point, no one had ever flown a plane. They learned that the truth is not always in the external appearance of things. That mind shift gear helped them to shift from the inside out rather than the outside in. Michael Jordan's another example of this. He's a great coach he's a great basketball player, by the way, guys, but he flunked out of basketball in high school and went home and cried and locked himself in his room. Now, not many people know that part of his story. but he chose to live from the inside out rather than the outside in. And I'm going to tell you something else about Michael Jordan. He will tell you that he would be nowhere without the coach that he had. What made him great and what made people aware of his greatness was having a coach, because he wasn't designed to do it alone. Lucille Ball in high school was told in her drama class that she was never going to make it in acting because she was too shy. But guess what? Michael Jordan, the Wright brothers, and Lucille Ball chose not to listen to the negative voices in their head and the things that the naysayers were saying. And I just chose to, and you think it's because they're famous? They weren't famous when they applied it. They became famous later. I did the same thing when I was pulling myself back up from college, when I was pulling myself back up as a penniless, homeless widow 11 and a half years ago. We did not depend on the conditions. And this, if you get this, oh my gosh, you'll be dangerous in a good way. We did not depend on the conditions and circumstances to define our life for us. But here's the big key. We have to be intentional. It's not going to happen if we just sort of hope or wish. A hope or a wish is not enough. It has to have intentional action behind it, because growth doesn't just happen on its own. Often when I ask people, so tell me, in what ways have you pursued personal growth since getting out of high school or college? Very few of them actually have an answer since formal education. But here's the thing about the formal education we often have. It doesn't teach us how to think. It teaches us what to think. It says, memorize this, do this, do this. But we're not taught how to think from the inside out. We're not taught how to critically question. And so why growth is so important is because if you have goals, that's wonderful, and you may hit your goals. I may hit my goals, okay? I may hit my goals. But if I have a growth plan, here's what I'm going to guarantee. I'm going to guarantee to hit my goals and grow in the process. That's why I have a whole other presentation on throwing away goal setting and traded it in for growth plan. Because with growth plans, you guarantee success. With goal setting, you may have some, but it's not as much of a guarantee. It doesn't just happen. What are the growth gaps? There's 8 of them. Assumption gap. I assume I'm automatically going to grow. But if I make this assumption that it's automatically going to happen, how do I gauge if I'm growing or not? There's a whole knowledge gap. I can't create a growth plan, Jeanie, because I don't know how to grow. And there's the timing gap. It's not the right time. I have a news flash here, and I have a news flash in another one. And the news flash is, it's never going to be the right time. The law of diminishing returns says this: the longer we wait to do something, the less likely it is we're going to do it. Then there's the mistake gap. What if I screw up? So what? Okay, so I like Nick's and Roxy's and Chris's and the rest of your guys. I like your success posts, but I like it every now and then too when I hear you say, man, I messed up, because you didn't say I'm going to hide it, and you didn't say I'm going to linger there. You said I'm going to get it out, get it on the table, and then move on. It's not about perfection. And that's the next gap, the perfection gap. I have to find the best way before I can start, and I will move after my perfect plan shows up. Guys, I have paralyzed myself before, the analysis of paralysis, and waiting for things to be good enough. And the inspiration gap, I don't feel like growing. The problem here is relying on your feelings, which are unreliable. If you're like me, your feelings change on a subject matter 5 to 10 times in a day sometimes. I want you to hear this next sentence loud and clear. You and I are more likely to act ourselves into feeling than we are to feel ourselves into acting. That's why I have to hit play when I don't feel like it. And then after I hit play, I feel so good about it. But if I wait for the feeling to show up to inspire me to move, not going to happen. Comparison gap. Everybody else is better than me. I'm not as worthy of this as they are. Guess what? There's always going to be somebody better ahead of us, and there's always going to be able to be people that need to learn from us, and we're out in front for them. But the problem that John taught me a couple of years ago, which is why I joined his program, is if you're always in the head of the class, you need to go find a new class, because you need to be challenged. And so I went from being a very large fish in a tiny pond. So when I joined the Maxwell team, I'm like a guppy in the Atlantic Ocean now. I mean, there's so many people further on the journey than me. And then there's the expectation gap that says, gosh, I thought it'd be easier than this. I thought I'd be in my size 6 in 3 weeks. If Rome wasn't built in a day, how much time am I going to give myself? And how much time are you going to allow yourself without beating yourself up in the process? The law of intentionality on growth plans. Do you have a plan to grow? Where do you want to go? What direction do you want to go? What's the furthest you can imagine going? And how long is it going to take? Here's the cool thing. You may not have all these answers right away, and that is okay. Keep exploring the question like I did with Italy. Keep exploring the question, and I promise you this, the answers will come, often in the most unexpected ways that you could imagine. But the real key is that nothing so conclusively proves our ability to lead and coach others. And Nick alluded to this earlier when I first got on this morning. Nothing so conclusively proves our ability to lead others than what we do day to day to lead ourselves. So think about what makes you come alive. What can you stay up all night long talking about because it just gives you energy? Are there any things that you're good at that other people are not that you really like doing? For sports fans, we call it the sweet spot. It's that place in the baseball bat where the ball and the bat hitting that perfect sound cracks. And that's the sweet spot with living. It's about discovering your sweet spot. Jim Rohn was a big personal development guru himself, and he recently passed away. And one of the things that he said is, the book you don't read cannot help you. The seminar you don't attend cannot change your life. Your business and your life get better when you get better. So stop wishing it were easier and begin wishing you were better. It is not what we are that keeps us from investing in ourselves. It's what we think we are. So here's where we have to face the fear factor and decide, what is stronger with me, Jeanie? What is stronger with Chris? What is stronger with Mallory? What is stronger with Stacy? And sometimes that will flip back and forth for us. Is it the desire to grow, or is it one of the fears? Is it a fear of failure? Or my personal favorite, though I've had all of these, fear of trading security for the unknown. Fear of being overextended on resources. Fear of what others think, and fear of pushing others away. You know what? Fear of what others think. Other people's opinions of me to a certain degree isn't even my business. My opinion of myself is something I need to be really concerned with. Fear stands for false evidence appearing real. It's not real. It's not real. I'm going to date myself, but I was turned half a century old this past year. And back when I was a very young child, this show came on called Saturday Night Live. And the classics with Gilda Radner, Chevy Chase, I mean, they rock it out. And one of Gilda Radner wrote a book called It's Always Something before she passed away from cervical cancer. And in that book, she talks about her cousin Dibby, and Dibby had a special dog that was pregnant, and there was a huge injury with at their house in the yard with some issues that happened when they were mowing the grass, and so Dibby lost 2 of her legs. And they took her to the vet emergently, and the vet says, well, I can put her to sleep. She was a week away from giving birth, or I can save her and she'll be able to give birth to normal, healthy puppies. And they said, we want you to save her. So he sewed her back up, did the surgery. She recovered well. She had 6 health. She learned to walk in a new way with no back legs. She'd take her 2 front legs and then she'd shove. Kerplunk, step, step. Kerplunk, step, step. She gave birth to 6 healthy puppies, and when they learned to walk, they all walked like her. Kerplunk, step, step, even though they had 4 legs. That's why it's not only important what you learn, but who you learn it from, because you will start walking like that individual. Okay, one of my favorite classics, and the reason I put these guys in here from The Wizard of Oz is because that's what this whole learning the art of that one thing. Another movie It's called City Slickers with Billy Crystal. And in it, there is a group of men having a midlife crisis that go off to a dude ranch to discover themselves. And there at the dude ranch is Curly the cowboy. And Curly the cowboy takes him on a cattle run. And he says, Billy keeps interviewing him as Mitch. He plays the guy named Mitch. And he says, what's the most important thing? What's the key to life, Curly? And Curly would go, one thing. And he kept saying, but he wouldn't tell him what the one thing was. And one day before Curly died, he asked him, and Curly says, that's up for you to figure out. And for me, the one thing was the change in the mindset. Okay? Because what happens is it takes, the scarecrow wanted a brain. Well, it does take a little bit of intelligence, guys. Somebody asked him in the movie, how are you able to talk without a brain? And he said, I don't know, but it seems like an awful lot of people do talking without brains in their head. You know, and the Tin Man wanted the heart. The lion wanted his courage, and Dorothy, all she ever wanted was to go home, but she got lost along the way. And when we have our vision and our why really clear, we don't get lost along the way, but we combine a little bit of the brain with a little bit of the heart and a big dose of courage, which means moving forward in spite of fear rather than waiting for the fear to go away. We get the key to our success, but an unexamined life is a dangerous thing. None of us are going to produce great things unless we are willing to be thoroughly sincere in dealing with ourselves. What does growth look like when it's accidental versus intentional? Couple of things. You plan to start tomorrow versus insisting on going forward today. You wait for it to come and show up rather than taking responsibility and initiating. One is the reactor, the other is the creator. You learn only from mistakes. You depend on good luck. You quit early and often and fall into bad habits, and you talk big. You're a great talker, but you want to play it safe, and you think like a victim, and you rely on talent. Whereas we not only learn from our mistakes when we're intentional, but we learn before the mistakes, and we rely on our work, and we persevere, and we fight for good habits. Sometimes we fight hard. We take 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. We follow through, We follow through, we take risks, we think like a learner, and we rely on our character. Your view of yourself is going to determine your behavior, because you're never going to outperform your self-image, and neither am I. One of the things when I was talking to Nick and Roxy about this presentation, I said, what do you want? Do you want to focus on fitness? You want to focus on this? And they said, no. We want it to focus on them becoming better versions of them, because they win all across the board. And they know that we will not outperform our own self-image, which is why when we have that self-talk, we need to change some things around. A little poem here I've gotten, because this is true. If any of you have watched Survivor or any of the other reality shows, it's not always the biggest and strongest on the surface that wins. It says, if you think you are beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you like to win, but you think you can't, it's almost certain you won't. If you think you'll lose, you're lost, for out of the world we find, success begins with the fellow's will, it's all in his state of mind. If you think you're outclassed, you are, you've got to think high to rise, you've got to be sure of yourself if you ever want to win a prize. Life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster man, but sooner or later, the one who wins is the one who thinks he can. So the question then becomes, which mirror do we choose to look in? Because we really need to choose wisely. Ann Landers used to write a column in the newspaper, and she says at 20, we're always so worried about what others are thinking of us. At 40, we become a little less concerned what others are thinking of us. And at 60, we discover no one was really thinking about us all along. And the real key isn't whether they are or not. The real key is, how do you choose to see yourself? Dialing up the frequency to better thinking was what got me out of homelessness, and with John Maxwell, it's what got me graduating with honors, and it's what will get me in my size 6. And how that looks is, let's say I tune in the radio station to 92.5 FM, and it's real staticky, and I can't hear well on that channel. So am I going to keep it on that channel? Heck no, I'm going to keep dialing up to another frequency till I can find clarity. And all of a sudden, boom, 103.5, easy listening, I've got it going on. That's how you do the same. It's a radio wave example of our thinking. It's what the Wright brothers used. They never said, once I save up enough money to receive flight training. No, they had a vision with no prior in those circumstances. Think about it. We have to think about what we're thinking about. And guess what, guys? I'm going to tell you, the negative stuff, it's free, and it's going to show up with a committee in your head 80% of the time. You got to work to get the good stuff. So passion and knowing your why. What happens when we get in touch with that? We end up on an incredible journey. Passion will pull us up, and it will enable us to overcome adversity much easier. It positions us and gives us the greatest odds for success, and it provides us with initiative. Passion tells your what, how to do it. Knowing your why gives meaning, and it helps you in the pursuit of getting there. Otherwise, we will stumble because the obstacles and the barriers will definitely come. And at the end of the day, when you're building a life of significance, you want to think in terms of 3 ways. You need to think in terms of yourself. Some people would say that's selfish, but no, you got to put the oxygen mask on you first if the plane's going down. You have to think in terms of yourself. But then you move on to think in terms of others. Our dreams are not worthy if they don't benefit others. In our Dare to Dream program, we have 10 questions that we ask. Woodrow Wilson once said, "You are not here to make a living. You're here to make a difference and to live more amply and with greater vision and with a finer hope. And you are here to enrich the world, and you impoverish yourself if you forget that errand." So we talked about our comfort zones, and life begins at the end of it. Key though, guys, John will tell you this all the time. Stay in your strength zone, but get out of your comfort zone. Here's why. If you get out of your comfort and your strength zone, you're completely miserable. But if you keep your passion going, you're willing to take risks, and it's not so hard. Guess what? If somebody else is pulling your dream and it's not really your dream, you're going to have to be pulled out of bed to get going in the morning. But if it's yours, the passion alone will get you moving. Florence Littauer is a famous author that has a really cool program in New Mexico. And she said that her dad always wanted to be a singer, but he never pursued his dreams. So he ended up dying with the music still inside of him. And when we choose not to reach our potential, it's kind of like dying with the music still inside of us. I have spent my time at the bedside of many patients taking their final breaths in life. And I'm going to tell you something. Not one of them said, "Jeanie, could you do me a favor? Could you go get my college degree in its walnut frame? I want to go hug it one more time." And not one of them said, "Jeanie, I want to get out in my fancy car. I just want to feel the leather and turn the key in the ignition one more time." And not one of them said, "I want to read my financial statement to give me a sense of peace one more time." No, every single one of them said two over prevailing themes. One, "I wish I had taken more risks and didn't always play life so safe." And then the other thing over and over is that all they cared about at that time were people that they loved around them. And I thought, you know, if that's such a great way to die, might it not be a better way to live if we start focusing while we're living on building into people? So I have found that to be a remarkable way not to let the music die inside. So I ask myself, what is it I'm thankful for? And these are just 5 of the things with Thanksgiving around the corner. Health, home, family, friends, and food. There's a lot more. And I used to do a gratitude journal where no matter how bad my day was, I made myself write down 5 things at the end of the day for which I was grateful. But it changed my disposition and my attitude. And to wrap it all up, yes, another poem. And don't tell me I'm like Dr. Strandmark, Chris. "I bargained with life for a penny, and life would pay no more. However, I begged at evening when I counted my scanty store. For life is a just employer. He gives you what you ask. But once you have set the wages, why you must bear the task. I worked for a menial's hire, only to learn dismayed that any wage I had asked of life, life would have willingly paid." We do not want to get to the end and find that to be our reality. You know, once you and I get a hold of how valuable we are, we can be dangerous in a really, 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 really good way. Excuse me, somebody's very persistent today. This poem, though, it does appear to be terms in terms of monetary value, but it's not. It's much, much more than that. We teach other people how to treat us. And Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." So I want you to understand something. As a nurse in healthcare, there are some things I know about the human body. And sometimes when we feel like, gosh, do I have that much value? One of the things I know is it doesn't matter if it's Chris or Sarah or Roxy. If I said, gosh, I would love to read the blueprint that makes up Chris Kokinos, any one of you, if I asked to read your blueprint, you are so amazing and so fearfully and wonderfully made in the dynamics of the human anatomy that it would take me well over 90 years, day and night, reading nonstop just to read a description of who you are. And so when I think about that reality, I think it's worth pushing play and it's worth doing the things I need to do to get things done. And so that kind of wraps up my portion for today in an overview. What time is it? 7 till. There is a little worksheet that goes along with that. And Roxy, I'll get it to you. So maybe we can put it on with the whatever you record.
Yes, most definitely. So I think Chris already sent me that worksheet. So
Okay.
to all our participants on this call, I will post it in our group so everyone could download it.
Any questions?
Yeah, so every time you switch to a different point, I was like, oh my God, I want to like stop and talk about this and like, oh, where can I save that? And like, I mean, obviously recorded it, right? So I'll be able to go back and watch it.
Here's the other thing though, Nick, what you're saying is interesting because maybe if we do something like this again, we should actually have it more informal Q&A as we go.
Yeah, because like, yeah, I mean, you were taking a little bit of time to touch on some of the topics and like, you know, you would give the formal meaning of them or whatever, but then you would break in and say, hey, you know, how you were applying it to what you had going on right now. And I think that is like that's the coolest part for me is, you know, even when you would grab like your 21-day fix and it's something that, you know, that we all have in common that we can relate it to, you know, and it's really cool because, you know, when I hear you read a quote or whatever, I mean, I could spend the next 10 minutes just kind of thinking, you know, really thinking that quote over and over and just saying, wow. And, you know, thinking of all the different ways to apply it and things. So to me, that's the coolest part is like how we can relate it to, you know, our normal everyday stuff.
You know, you guys have this PowerPoint now, and so you can actually take any one of these slides and do some fun stuff with it with your Beachbody group.
Cool.
For sure. So how about the rest of you guys on the call? Everyone's unmuted now. So feel free to speak. Don't be shy. I know a lot of people didn't want to join this call because they're like, oh, will I be on camera? Will I be recorded? I got shy about it. And, you know, is it like going to be broadcasted somewhere else? It's like, no, it's I just want this to be really casual. And actually, this event, it's just to thank you, all of you, who make the team. Because without you guys, like, you know, going on your journeys, like, we wouldn't have this team. You know, it's not about just us coaches. It's not about just me and Nick. It's not about that. It's like we built this team for everyone. And I hope that, you know, you guys found some value or a lot of value in this presentation, and hopefully, you know, it resonated with you in one way or another. And yeah, again, the worksheets will be up there, and I think I actually recorded this presentation, so I will put this up on either my YouTube or Vimeo account for all our participants to be able to watch again. So hopefully this really helps. So any other questions you guys have for Jeanie? Or feedback? Speak up.
No, I just want to say thank you. That was really cool, and I like the way it is interactive versus just being on the board all the time, which is good, and it does really help me staying accountable day to day. But I really like the way this is accountable, and I think my favorite part was the growth plan versus the goals, because with the growth plan, it's true that no matter what, you win, you accomplish, you know, you're growing, and I think that's the goal in life, to not stay stuck and keep moving forward in every aspect of our life, you know, at work, at home, physically, with everything. at least for me, like I just want to keep growing so I don't feel stuck in any area. That's what I really took notes on and what I want to work on.
And stop listening to that crazy lady in your head, Terry.
Oh my God, she's so crazy too. She's the problem.
The growth plan, though, when you're talking about it, I mean, I get to do some pretty big stuff for my company and from a standpoint of financial budgets, and I get to travel around the country, and I get to go around the world with John Maxwell. But guess what? When it comes to a growth plan, it's the great equalizer for every one of us, because I get on this Facebook page and I learn so much from your guys' posts. Sometimes you make me laugh. Sometimes I cry, but I always learn and grow from the process. I cry not because of what I'm seeing. I cry because of what you have caused me to get in touch with myself by putting an accountability post up there and going, man, I have the same struggle.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Jeanie, that you posted. You talked about, like the perfection. It's like that's what I think a lot of our challengers miss out on, and thinking like, oh, I'm only going to post when I push play or when I eat good, but in reality, it's like no one's perfect, even us coaches. It's like we don't always eat well, it's like sometimes we want to eat pizza.
Yeah.
Us women, we get so moody, and then we're like, oh, just give me some ice cream or a donut and I'll be fine.
Ice cream is my go-to, and if I weren't on this accountability group, I would have last night really indulged in it, but instead I pulled out a frozen banana and some almond milk and stuck it in a blender and got my sweet tooth without adding in the dairy and without adding in the extra sugar.
There was a time where we were working out like hard every day, and I would eat ice cream every single day.
Really?
We're working so hard. We're working out, insanity. So who cares whatever we eat? So we go out on buffets all the time, and we're like wondering, why aren't we paying? I mean, it really happens, and it's like I'd like to encourage everyone to just like post your struggles, because the thing is, it's like sometimes when you're struggling or when you fall off the wagon, you think like, oh crap, it's like I'm such a loser, I'm such a failure, and I can't really do anything about my situation. We tend to get really hard on ourselves. And the thing is, like, when you post about your imperfections, as Jeanie said, it's like someone's gonna relate to you and say like, hey, me too. I ate a tub of ice cream last night too, and now I feel like crap. But I mean, our failures, our so-called failures, they're really inspirational. It's like it's inspiring to know that someone failed like you did, but was accountable enough to post about it. That, hey, I want to change. It's like maybe today is the day I will change, or we're always going to have that new day, and we could always make it a new day. So
failure does not actually, failure is such a beautiful thing. John wrote a book, Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Learn. And he had the word failure crossed out, because actually a lot of times people make the mistake of thinking the more successful an individual is, the more likely they are to be perfect. And usually they're the people that have had the most failures and chosen to learn from them. So if you're somebody that struggled with a lot of failure, I consider it building blocks for your massive success down the road.
Exactly. It's like you can't be a strong person if you did deal with crap in your life. If your life was so perfect growing up, and your college life, your relationships, if everything was perfect from the day you were born, I can't believe that you could actually be a strong person, because you've never you've never learned from anything, you never had to go through anything to like rise above. And that's why we love what we do, and we love you guys, like just being honest and sharing your failures, because there's like a saying too that says failing forward. I don't know who came up with that term, but that's what we're supposed to do. We have to fail forward. We don't fail and then go backward, which most of us do. But we have to learn, it's like we have to fail forward. Every time we fail, we have to pick up ourselves and move forward, because that's all we can do.
Failing Forward is actually the title of one of John's books.
Oh, maybe that's where I got it from, because I've seen
it. Seems to me like he's got us all getting on a fitness journey. I'm noticing my mentors that very high up in the organization are starting. It seems to me like we should have a dual conference at some point.
Well, he's done a lot of the big beach body
yeah.
events and everything. And
were you there when I saw him?
He was at Summit.
Okay.
I don't know if I saw Darren Hardy. I saw, I don't know, I've seen a lot,
Yeah.
but I know John,
I
I think John, right before I got into Beachbody was when John Maxwell was doing like all the conferences, and like you would have different things as far as coaches would win different prizes, and a lot of times they were giving away John Maxwell books. And
so maybe we should do that for our group. We can give out John Maxwell books to you guys.
You know what? We could be onto something.
Yeah, because I think my first summit in Vegas, that's when I just went there alone. I didn't know my team. I had no idea what the business was. I just wanted to go and work out with Tony Horton. But I was a coach. I was a discount coach. I had no idea what was going on. I wasn't making commission, anything like that. I didn't understand the business. I didn't really care. But I went there, and that's when I was able to see John Maxwell live as the keynote speaker. And it's like every word and every sentence he said that came out of his mouth was just like, it was just so inspiring, because it was so true. You know, no matter how ugly the truth is, I mean, it's real. It makes you so inspired to like better yourself. You know, so to the people in our call who hasn't heard about John Maxwell, yeah, go on his website, or you know, there's like, I think, a daily thing that you can subscribe to, Jeanie, right?
Yes, it's daily. It's a minute with Maxwell. It's called A Minute with Maxwell. And it's like, what happens is we throw out words at him. Like we might say empowerment, and he doesn't get these words in advance. He just does it off the cuff. He's so used to this.
Yeah, so you guys, you know, it's like just sign up for that. I think Chris has that on her email, the Minute with Maxwell. So, you know, it's like just get like inspiration from him, and I think it will really help with life, not just with fitness.
So I'm like sat here and watched this presentation and everything, and I'm sitting here thinking like, oh my God, like Jeannie's awesome, John Maxwell's awesome, this was awesome. I want more, or I want to follow up, and I want to make sure like, you know, I mean, what are the odds I'm going to go back myself and watch all this again, right? Like, but I want to, you know, like she said, the daily thing, or I want more information, or I want to do things like this more often. Where do I go now? What do I do next? Like, how do I get more involved in this kind of stuff?
Couple of things you can do actually is if friend me on Facebook, because I'm going to be having an intentional living project showing up soon, and it's a 7-day project that takes about 10 to 15 minutes a day, and it's free, and it also leads into a 30-day project for people who are interested further, and that's like a $30 or $40 fee for the 30-day program, and it's, again, a lot of it's inconvenience in your own time. There are a couple of mastermind groups that I'm going to be starting after the holidays. And what a mastermind group is, it's people sign up, they pick the one they want and the price they want. And it's like usually a 4 or 5 week group that I meet on a Saturday morning or a Sunday night or a Thursday night. And we go through the 15 laws of growth in 5 weeks. It's a wonderful book. Or we go through Put Your Dreams to the Test, so people can get more in touch with what is my dream, what are the 10 questions that Jeanie gives us to test it, and that sort of thing. Those are coming up after the holidays, so I'll be having more information about them. I also have a website, which is johnmaxwellgroup.com/Jeanie Holzbacher. And I actually, when I was listening to the feedback this morning, think that maybe we might want to consider in December sometime doing the goals versus growth plans presentation, but rather than me doing all the talking, make it a partial kind of Q&A thing.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. So we'll make sure we get up like all the stuff you just said, your website and the John Maxwell stuff. We'll post that somewhere in the group, so that way it's there, like, you know, on the screen, so everybody has it.
Maybe we could even have like a files document in the files tab for everything that, you know, you've been sharing with us, Jeanie. So all of us who have joined this call, or people who missed this call and want to know more, like, we can definitely have that living document up there. So we could always refer to it.
There's a file in the group.
There's another thing I was thinking of, you know, for the people, like, you know, Nick, a lot of people aren't going to have time if they've been on this to go back, but some people will want to. If they're like some of my friends, not saying your mom or anything, but they are so detailed and pinpoint that they sometimes do go back and go through. And, you know, if maybe one thing we could do is actually at some point host an open-ended Q&A call for people that once they've had a chance to review this, if they want to come back with their list of questions and we have some dialogue back and forth, just informal Q&A, that's another option.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. As long as you have time for us, Jeanie. I know you're busy. So, you know.
You guys are a priority to me because you're going to get me in my size 6.
Okay, we're going to help you with that. You're going to help us with this.
So, yeah.
No, there she is. She's not my best friend right now, but when it's over, she will be.
The next couple months and the holidays and stuff, I think what we should do is, you know, we'll have the call recorded and she'll get it up on YouTube, and then we can post a link in the group, and we can also, like, kind of as a group, like, go through and rework this whole, because there's a lot of different things in the presentation that we could really spend, you know, a lot of times on each little quote or everything. And so we'll just kind of go back over everything and rework everything, and then, you know, along with the worksheets and then all the stuff that you have coming up, Jeanie, you know, we'll make sure that we don't just, like, have it, oh, this call is it, and then you'll never, you know, hear about this stuff again. I think we'll really make it a point to have it a reoccurring.
Yeah, we have to be intentional about it, right, Jeanie?
Exactly.
Intentional.
So what I'll do later today, I will post this video on YouTube, share it in our group, okay? So everyone has access. Everyone could just review it, watch it, take notes, whatever you want to do.
Start discussions on, you know, I'd love to have discussions on each, you know, individual little topic and stuff, that, you know, as we go.
And if you guys, you know, something resonated with you and you want to talk about it, or you just want to say, like, hey, I think this is what I want to focus on this holiday season or this week or this month, please post it in our group so we could all jump in and, you know, discuss it. And we as coaches would, like, what we could focus on, and we'll do follow-up calls if you guys are interested in that. Just so, you know, again, like what Nick said, it's not just like a one event and that's it.
Yeah, there's too much good, you know, there's too many little nuggets that are just, they're gold, and I don't want everything to kind of just, you know, just disappear like everything does. I mean, most of these quotes and these things, like, we've all heard, you know, in the past, but for some reason, you know, having somebody kind of live in your face telling you, it's like you attach, you know, a feeling to them, and I don't want them to just kind of go away. And
I'm listening to Nick Kokinos, and what's coming to my mind is like a series of 15 5-minute videos.
Yeah, I would love, that would be perfect,
so
you know, and then
cool,
we just keep them, you know, coming every so often, you know, not back to back, so that way we can have a little video, and then there's time to digest it, go over it a few times, you know, get some conversations going on it, you know, maybe like a little Jeanie tip once a week, you know, or something like that, just to kind of go back over all this stuff, you know, over the next couple months or so, and then, you know, really dissect. I think there's just so many good things in this call that I would love to dissect, you know, a little bit at a time.
Okay, sounds good. We can, why don't you and I and you know, you and I and Chris can talk offline at another time about how to break that down, and how you guys I could do a 5-minute video, and then you guys could spin off it with your stuff.
Yeah, I like that.
What do you guys think? Other people on the line, on the call, any feedback, any questions? Don't be shy. I can see your faces.
It was great. I took lots of notes.
I saw Stacy taking notes.
I write everything down.
That's so good. Cool. And I miss you, Stacy.
So Stacy, if you write everything down, then as I'm listening to you, for someone like you, it'd be very helpful if I'm doing something to make sure you had the PowerPoints and the worksheets.
Yeah, not everything, but I try to get most of the good points.
Yeah, some people are all different. I noticed that. Like, for me, like even in school, if I was writing stuff down, like I would have no clue what just happened. Like I need to sit there and, you know, even reading stuff, I don't like to read as Jeannie's reading us a quote. I like to like stare off into something and listen to her read the quote. You know, if I read the quote, it's like I have to read it 6 times to really understand what just happened. You know, it's just people learn all different kinds of ways. I like to just listen to people talk and watch things, you know, and then which sucks because then a lot of times you know, when I want to go back, I'm like, man, I wish I would have had like some kind of notes or something. So, you know, but we'll make sure everybody has these, you know, the video available, the PowerPoint's available, and then, you know,
maybe I could turn this into an audio too. So if, you know, if people want to listen to it while you're driving and don't want to watch the video while you're driving.
I mean, I've been driving maybe roughly like 15 hours a week for work. And I would like listen. Yeah, I would listen to this stuff like all the time. I mean, what are you gonna do? Listen to the radio, or you could listen to something like this, you know? So yeah, that'd be cool too. So
sweet.
All right.
Well, all right. I know we went over our time, but that's good, I think. So again, thank you everyone for joining this call. I hope this this event is good. I mean, it's going to be one. The first of many events that we will have with Jeanie, and first of many events for personal development in our group. I hope this really helped everyone, and you know, let's talk about this. Let's start discussions in our group.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, if you guys liked what went on, just make it a point to, you know, really let others know that we're on the call. Like, you know, because from the outside looking in, it's really hard to describe how much value is going to be presented, or, you know, it's a call, I don't want to get on. It's just, you know, whatever they might think of it, it's really hard, you know. But if we have a bunch of us, you know, getting on there and saying that, you know, we attended and we really liked it and whatever, I think it'll really help move things, you know, move things along.
So feel free to provide feedback on in our group page, and, you know, let us also know how to make this the presentation and the event even better. To you guys. All right.
Thank you, Jeanie.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.